August 1981, a modest home in Brooklyn, New York. Dominick, Napolitano's children are watching television. Their father is getting ready for a meeting. The man who spent 30 years as a Bonanno crime family captain, who controlled rackets across Brooklyn and Manhattan, who commanded respect from soldiers who'd kill on his word. That man is about to walk into a basement in Staten Island where 3 of his own family members are waiting to execute him. His daughter is in the living room. His son is upstairs. His youngest daughter is doing homework at the kitchen table. They don't know this is the last time they'll see him alive. Within hours, Sonny Black goes from running crews in Williamsburg to a creek in Staten Island with his hands severed. From commanding soldiers and earning millions to an unmarked grave that won't be discovered for a year. From the most feared captain in the Bonanno family to a cautionary tale about trusting the wrong person. But the moment Dominick Napolitano vouched for Donnie Brasco, he sentenced his family to something far worse than anything the FBI had planned for him. Because his children didn't choose this life. They didn't choose to have their father murdered by his own family. And they didn't choose to carry a name that would forever be connected to the biggest FBI infiltration in Mafia history. Sonny's wife would eventually rebuild a quiet life away from the cameras and the questions. His oldest daughter would marry and disappear into suburban anonymity under a different name. His son would struggle with the weight of a legacy built on violence and ended in betrayal. This is what happened to Sonny Black's children and how the sins of the father followed them into lives they never asked for. Subscribe if you want more stories about the families left behind by organized crime. Dominick Napolitano was born on June 16, 1930, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. His father was a laborer who worked construction jobs when he could find them. His mother was a Sicilian immigrant who kept the household running for 5 children in a cramped tenement apartment in one of Brooklyn's toughest neighborhoods. Across the street from the Napolitano building sat a social club that belonged to the Bonanno crime family. The crew ran the neighborhood. They controlled loan sharking, bookmaking, hijacking, and numbers rackets out of storefronts that looked legitimate from the outside. By the time Dominick was 14, he was running errands for Bonanno soldiers, delivering messages, parking cars, and watching how these men moved through Williamsburg like they owned every corner. He loved it. He never looked back. By his late teens, Dominick had earned the nickname Sonny Black. The name came from his jet black hair and dark complexion. He dressed exclusively in black suits. He drove a black Cadillac. He built an image of a serious, dangerous man who didn't waste words. Sonny's criminal career escalated through the 1950s and 1960s. He participated in hijackings at the docks. He ran bookmaking operations across Brooklyn. He enforced collections for loan sharks. He killed when the family ordered it. By 1976, he'd become a captain with his own crew of 15 soldiers. He controlled operations in Williamsburg, Greenpoint, and parts of Manhattan. He reported directly to the family's administration. He was respected, he was feared. He'd murdered at least 5 people by the time he met Donnie Brasco. In the middle of all of this, the rackets, the violence, the power, there was a family. Sonny married young to a woman from the neighborhood. She came from a working-class Italian family. She understood the life because she'd grown up around it. Her father knew made men. Her uncles ran with the crews. When she married Sonny in the early 1950s, she knew what she was getting. She knew where the money came from. She knew why certain people showed up at the house with envelopes. She knew not to ask questions. The money came steadily. Comfortable homes in Brooklyn neighborhoods where families knew each other for generations. New cars parked in driveways. Private school tuition for the children. Envelopes of cash on kitchen counters. Sonny's wife managed the household with the understanding that her husband's business stayed outside. She raised the children. She kept the house. She attended Sunday Mass, and for the outside world, they looked like any other Italian-American family in Brooklyn. The only difference was that everything they owned, the house, the cars, the vacations, the Catholic school education, was paid for by extortion, hijacking, loan sharking, and contract murders that destroyed families across New York. Sonny had 4 children, 2 daughters and 2 sons. The oldest daughter was born in the early 1950s. She was the quiet one, the child who understood early that her father's business was not something discussed at the dinner table. The first son was born in the mid-1950s. He was the one who noticed the guns under jackets when men came to visit. The youngest daughter was born in the late 1950s. She was Daddy's girl, the one who believed everything was normal, because that's what her mother told her. The second son was born in the early 1960s. He was the baby of the family, the one who grew up watching his older siblings learn to navigate the silences and unspoken rules that governed their household. None of them would keep believing that for long. Sonny's wife was not a passive woman. She ran the household with authority. She managed money. She disciplined the children. She maintained appearances in the neighborhood. When Sonny came home late or didn't come home at all, she didn't question it. When police showed up asking questions, she said nothing. When FBI agents knocked on the door with subpoenas, she called the lawyer and closed the door. The children grew up watching their father command respect everywhere he went. Restaurant owners cleared tables for him. Neighbors moved out of his way on the sidewalk. Men twice his size listened when he spoke. But they also grew up watching their mother sit by the window at night waiting for headlights in the driveway. They grew up learning to lie about what their father did for work. They grew up understanding that certain questions were never asked out loud. By the late 1970s, Sonny's position in the Bonanno family had solidified. He was a moneymaker. He was reliable. He was dangerous enough that rivals didn't test him. But the family was fracturing. Leadership disputes, federal investigations, and internal betrayals had weakened the organization. The family needed fresh blood. They needed earners who could operate without drawing attention. That's where Donnie Brasco came in, and that's where everything fell apart for Sonny Black and everyone connected to him. Joseph Pistone was an FBI agent working undercover as Donnie Brasco, a jewel thief from California. In September 1976, Brasco met Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero, a Bonanno soldier. Lefty vouched for Brasco. In 1977, Lefty introduced Brasco to Sonny Black. Sonny was looking for earners. Brasco claimed he could move stolen goods and counterfeit merchandise. Sonny tested him with small jobs. Brasco delivered. Sonny trusted him more. By 1979, Brasco was embedded in Sonny's crew. He attended meetings. He participated in criminal operations. He was there when Sonny discussed murders and racketeering. Brasco was gathering evidence on everything. Sonny didn't just tolerate him. Sonny sponsored him. Sonny was preparing to propose Brasco for membership. Getting made. Sonny vouched for Brasco's character, his earning ability, his loyalty. If Brasco got made, Sonny's reputation would rise. But if Brasco turned out to be fake, Sonny would pay with his life. That's the rule. You vouch for someone, you answer for them. Sonny knew the risk. He took it anyway, because he believed Donnie Brasco was real. And that belief would destroy him and leave his children with a legacy they could never escape. On July 26, 1981, the FBI held a press conference. They announced that Donnie Brasco was actually Special Agent Joseph Pistone. They announced that Pistone had infiltrated the Bonanno family for 6 years. They announced indictments against 120 Bonanno members. The Mafia world exploded. The commission demanded accountability. Who brought Brasco in? Who vouched for him? The answer was clear. Benjamin Ruggiero and Dominick Napolitano, both men were summoned. Sonny Black had to die. On August 17, 1981, Sonny received the call. He was told to come to a meeting in Staten Island. He knew what it meant. He told his wife he might not come back. He told his oldest son to take care of the family. He dressed in his best black suit. He drove to Staten Island. He walked into the basement. 3 men were waiting. They shot him multiple times. His body was dumped in a creek with his hands severed. Sonny Black, 51 years old, was erased, but his family was just beginning to understand what it meant to be connected to the man who vouched for Donnie Brasco. When Sonny disappeared in August 1981, his family hoped he'd run. They hoped he'd survived. They hoped he was hiding somewhere the family couldn't reach him. But deep down, they knew. When someone in the Mafia disappears, they don't come back. Sonny's wife waited. She kept the house running. She told the children their father was away on business. She fielded questions from neighbors who'd seen the news. She met with lawyers who told her there was nothing they could do. She didn't file a missing persons report because filing meant involving police, and involving police meant breaking the code Sonny had lived by. So she waited in silence. The children knew something was wrong. Their father had never been gone this long without contact. No phone calls, no messages through associates, no envelopes of money appearing at the house. The oldest daughter was in her late 20s by then. She'd married and started her own family. She understood what her father did for a living, even if no one ever said it out loud. When he disappeared, she made a decision. She would protect her own children from the truth. She would never tell them who their grandfather really was. The first son was in his mid-20s. He'd grown up watching his father command respect and fear in equal measure. He'd seen the guns. He'd heard the conversations that stopped when he walked into a room. He'd known since childhood that his father was involved in things that could get him killed. When Sonny vanished, he waited for the call that never came. He waited for some message, some signal that his father was alive. Nothing came. The youngest daughter was in her early 20s. She'd been closest to Sonny. She'd sat on his lap as a child. She'd believed he was just a businessman who worked in Brooklyn. When he disappeared, she refused to accept it. She kept expecting him to walk through the door. She kept expecting everything to go back to normal. It never did. The second son was barely 20. He was the baby of the family, the one who'd grown up in his older siblings' shadows. He'd watched them learn to navigate their father's world while he was still trying to understand it. When Sonny disappeared, he looked to his older brother for guidance, but found only silence and grief. Sonny's body wasn't found until 1982. A fisherman discovered remains in a creek in Staten Island. The hands were missing. Dental records confirmed the identity: Dominick Napolitano. Sonny Black, dead for almost a year. The family had to bury a husband and father who'd been murdered by the same organization he'd dedicated his life to. The funeral was small, attended by family only. No made men showed up, no flowers from the crews, no eulogies about loyalty and respect. The Bonanno family had made it clear. Sonny Black died because he'd embarrassed them. His name was poison. Anyone who mourned him publicly would be marked. So the family buried him quietly and tried to move forward. But moving forward meant carrying a name that was now synonymous with the biggest FBI infiltration in Mafia history. Sonny's wife changed nothing about her life externally. She kept the house. She kept her routines. She attended the same church. She shopped at the same stores. But inside, something had broken. The man she'd married at 20, the man she'd raised 4 children with, the man she'd waited for through decades of late nights and dangerous business, had been executed like a rat. Not because he'd cooperated, because he'd trusted the wrong person. She never remarried. She never gave interviews. She never spoke publicly about Sonny or the Donnie Brasco operation, or what it felt like to bury her husband with his hands cut off. She lived quietly in Brooklyn until her death in the late 1990s. She took whatever she knew about Sonny's business to her grave. The oldest daughter disappeared into suburban life. She moved out of Brooklyn. She raised her children in a neighborhood where no one knew the Napolitano name. She never told her kids who their grandfather was. When they asked about family history, she gave vague answers about Brooklyn and construction work and how some things were better left in the past. She built a life that had nothing to do with the Mafia or the FBI or the man who'd vouched for Donnie Brasco. The first son struggled more. He'd grown up idolizing his father. He'd seen the respect. He'd seen the power. He'd wanted to understand that world even as he knew it was dangerous. After Sonny's death, he had to reconcile 2 truths. His father had been a killer, and his father had been killed for making one mistake. The weight of that contradiction followed him for years. He never joined the life. The Bonanno family wouldn't have taken him anyway. Sonny's name was tainted, but he carried the legacy in other ways. He struggled with anger. he struggled with trust. He struggled with the knowledge that the men who'd murdered his father were still walking around Brooklyn, still running crews, still living the life his father had died for. The youngest daughter took the longest to accept what had happened. She'd been closest to Sonny. She'd believed in him. When the truth came out about Donnie Brasco, about the infiltration, about why her father had been killed, she felt betrayed twice. Once by the FBI agent who deceived her father, and once by the family that had executed him for it. She moved away from New York. She changed her last name when she married. She built a life in a state where no one had heard of Sonny Black or the Bonanno family or the Donnie Brasco operation. She never spoke about her father. When people asked about her family, she said her father had died young and left it at that. The second son followed a different path. He was young enough when Sonny died that his memories were fewer but somehow sharper. He remembered his father's voice, his laugh, the way he commanded a room. He moved west after high school, putting as much distance between himself and Brooklyn as possible. He married, had children, and like his siblings, never spoke about who his father really was. All 4 children made the same choice independently. They erased the Napolitano connection from their lives. They stopped using the name publicly. They stopped attending family gatherings where the past might come up. They stopped answering questions about Brooklyn or the old neighborhood or what their father did for work. They became people with no history, no roots, no connection to the man who'd been murdered in a Staten Island basement. Sonny Black's legacy was reduced to a single fact. He was the captain who vouched for Donnie Brasco. Sonny Black, every documentary, every book, every Mafia history that mentioned his name framed him the same way. The man who got played by the FBI. The man who paid for that mistake with his life. His children inherited that legacy whether they wanted it or not. The oldest daughter lives somewhere outside New York under her married name. She's in her 70s now. She has grandchildren who don't know their great-grandfather was a Bonanno captain. She's kept it that way deliberately. The first son is in his late 60s. He's lived a quiet life away from the spotlight. He never gave interviews about his father. He never wrote a book. He never cashed in on the Napolitano name. He chose silence. The youngest daughter is in her mid-60s. She's somewhere in the country living under a name no one connects to Sonny Black. She's built a life that has nothing to do with organized crime or FBI operations or the betrayal that destroyed her family. She's never spoken publicly about what it felt like to lose her father that way. The second son is in his early 60s. He lives under an assumed name in a western state where nobody asks about Brooklyn. He raised his children without ever mentioning their grandfather's real identity. Dominick Napolitano died believing in the rules. He'd lived by them for 30 years. He'd killed for them. He'd earned by them. He'd risen through them. When the family decided he had to die for vouching for an FBI agent, he accepted it. He walked into that basement knowing what was waiting. His children didn't get that choice. They had to live with the consequences of a decision their father made before they were old enough to understand what it meant. The man who broke the rules by trusting Donnie Brasco died infamous. The people who followed the rules by staying silent chose to become nobody. And in a world where the Napolitano name once commanded respect, fear, and power in Brooklyn, being related to the captain who got played by the FBI meant inheriting his shame along with his name. Sonny's children all figured out the same thing independently in their own time. The only way to survive Sonny Black was to stop being a Napolitano entirely. If you enjoyed watching the film on Kids of Sonny Black, then you'll want to see our film on the mysteries of Al Capone and his last son was popped up on the upper left of your screen.